You're listening to Tuning In with Jeffrey Kipple. And sometimes Mindy.
Welcome to Tuning In. Yep, this is where we get to sit down and chat with authors and artists and musicians and creators and innovators and athletes and specialists of all types.
It is our hope to provide a platform for passion-fueled, purpose-driven individuals who want to make a difference in their own lives and in the lives of others. Others being you and anyone who's deciding to be tuning in to the lived experiences, the life lessons, and the discoveries that led to creations, innovations, and messages they want to share.
Yeah, so tune in, laugh, learn, get inspired. Tune in, tune in, tune in, tune in, tune in with Jeff and sometimes Mindy. Who's Jeff? I'm Jeff.
Who's Mindy? I'm Mindy.
Tune in.
So tune in, tap in, and take action. Tune in to their wisdom, tap into your potential, and take action to unleash your superhero. Welcome to Tuning In with Jeff and sometimes Mindy.
So tune in and enjoy the show.
Nice to see you, Jeff and Mindy.
Nice to see you.
Here, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. When I asked you to say something about yourself, you said you walk this tight line between the absurd and the sublime.
Ooh.
So what do you mean by that?
I wish I could tell you. Well, I think we always have our worldview come through our writing in some way. And I see the world as an essentially beautiful place, but also very absurd. So I think that my writing walks along this tightrope that kind of bridges this chasm. Maybe they're opposite cliffs. Maybe they're the gorge beneath. I don't know exactly, but there's always some of the sublime, some of the beauty of the world in it. And there's always, or a fantasy world, but a fantasy world just reflects how we see our world, and there's some of the absurd. So there's comedy, and there's chaos and bizarreness. And so sometimes things happen to my characters that are chaotic or bizarre, or absurd, and something beautiful happens by the end of the book.
What did you mean about the fantasy world reflecting how we see our world?
Well, I know that a lot of people like to say that their book just wrote itself, but I think that's BS. You make a decision about every single word that's in there. If not in the drafting phase, you do it in the editing. So I think it's just impossible for us to write fiction without something of our worldview coming through, because it's a lens, that we see through, that would almost be virtually impossible for us not to see the world through some lenses that we have, particularly assumptions that we make. So I don't know. I think I make an assumption, for example, that when I meet people, I think there's I can't remember the name of the law, but it's like Murphy's Law, or one of those laws, which is basically never assume malice when simple stupidity will do. So I make the assumption when I meet people that they are not trying to screw me over, that they are not trying to, there's no malicious intent. If they miss, like, if you guys didn't show up for this, podcast tonight, and I was sitting here going, where are they? Rather than assuming that you're just trying to get a dig in on me for whatever reason, I assume that, it's a comedy of errors. So I think that comes through whether we write fiction or nonfiction or poetry or whatever.
Yeah, cool. One of the genres that you write in is steampunk fantasy.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know what that really is, what is it?
I would be one of those people.
Okay. Steampunk, as I understand it, like I've read some by a writer named China Mieville. He's pretty famous, and he writes dark stuff. It's the steampunk vibe is like kind of humans merged with automatons or some kind of mechanical thing. There's usually like dirigibles and balloons. So people who are familiar with like The Last Airbender, that's kind of a steampunky type of show. And Hugo was a movie with the boy who lived in a clock. Those are kind of steampunk type of feels. And there's usually like a Victorian era dress, top hats, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And as well as along with that, and then the technology's kind of stopped at the steam age, pre-digital, internal combustion engine. So it creates a palette. Basically what it does is create a palette. Just it's a sepia tone. It's what it is. But it creates a palette for the writer. So you have limitations on technology. And then I just take a sledgehammer to that. All you got to do is add magic. Then anything's possible again. So interstellar travel with a Zeppelin. Why not? Because, it's steampunk, but it's fantasy. So hopefully that kind of helps.
Yeah, no, that does. So before you were writing, or maybe while you were writing still, you were a leadership coach and traveling around the world and doing things of that nature. So was there something that was an aha for you or a realization to make you switch from doing that into this, or is this just an extension?
So I'm still I had a couple of leadership coaching sessions today. So I'm still doing that. I went on the Camino de Santiago, which is like a pilgrimage route I went from Porto, Portugal to Santiago, Spain in November. And that was kind of where I decided that I'm ready to sort of be done being a coach trainer and work more on the writing, because I've got 12 books, but now it's kind of the shift to how I'm going to spend the primary energy, and I'm ready to write. So that was kind of just taking that 2-week break to hike a couple 100 miles was a big part of making that decision. I can't say exactly when it happened. I just came home knowing it was time to reprioritize. So sorry, go ahead, Mindy.
Yeah, that's cool.
You just answered my question, so thank you.
Oh, okay.
I didn't say a word. I just had to make a sound.
That's great.
Through the different works of fiction that you have, is there a key message that is a recurring theme or something that you want your readers to walk away with?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of them. Obviously, we talked about one, which is kind of like life is absurd and life is sublime, and those two things can coexist. That's a theme I think that recurs. And then I think that a lot of times I satirize religion, but I do that not out of a hatred for religion, but out of a love for it. And so that's different than, it creates something a little more funny and a little less dark, I think, when you actually love the thing that you're satirizing. Maybe kind of like I would rather what I would love to be is like what Twain was to race with Huckleberry Finn. I would like to be that for religion, so hopefully my books will get banned. And actually it would be good to be banned. Like it would sell a lot of books, but it would also mean that your ideas are being taken seriously enough, that people are upset about it. That means that other people are also not going to be upset about it and find that it supports them somehow or gives them something positive. Somebody once in the leadership coaching world, you get asked a lot of great questions. And somebody asked me one time, if you could just push a red button and solve a problem for the whole world with just the push of one red button, what would it be? And I immediately got emotional and realized that kind of my calling, if you will, is that everybody in the world ought to have at least one good friend who can walk alongside them without judgment. So I do that as a coach, obviously one-on-one, but I can't do that for the whole world, which is why I trained people to do it so that they could do it for other people. Yeah. But I really hope that my books are a friend. And, Groucho Marx said, outside of a dog, a book is a man's best friend. Inside a dog, it's too dark to read. So I hope that there's a theme of friendship. I would hope that people would get that same feeling about me as an author, that there's a connection of friendship, that they could email me and they're not going to get a nasty note back. Like they're going to get, and which is true, by the way. So yeah, I think those are probably a couple of the key things that I hope people would take away.
Did you have an experience that led to this being an important theme within your books?
Well, I had an experience that led to it being an important thing in my life. I think I was bullied some as a kid, and having friends was hard for me. There were things in my childhood that were tough in terms of making friends. So that's kind of what molded me as a person and I think there's some personality stuff, some things that have to do with just who I am, who I was made to be before I was even born, that I believe are part of that. The other thing is that my family went to live in central Congo when I was 13 years old, which is one of the toughest times in life to go live cross-culturally. I was from the cornfields of Illinois into the center of Congo, and without any peers, really. I mean, there were obviously children my age in the village, but they didn't have any common experiences. And so I was kind of in a time of life when people really, really need their peers. I didn't have any for a year, and I was really tough. So there were things about my upbringing that were tough in terms of friendship, both being bullied when I was at school here in the States, and then just having that year from 13 to 14, not having friends around. That made me passionate about that. It makes me who I am. And as I said earlier, like that just comes out in your worldview. So I don't think it's like anything intentional. It's just who I am.
It's always amazing to get feedback, from people, I love your book, and, a review, so that you know that you've impacted someone in a certain way. Has there been any type of situation where you've felt that, well, you know what, my message reached that person, like I accomplished my goal in this case?
I think Stephen King has it right in his book on writing that you really need to write for an audience of one. And I write for my wife. So I'll even read bits of rough draft to her the day after writing a chapter or something, and see if she laughs or starts crying or says, this is really, there's something deep in here. I mean, you're moving the story along, but there's a depth to it. Like, you don't even realize how deep what you're saying is. If she said, if any of those three reactions that I get from her, I'm good. And I think you have to have really thick skin and know that people are going to give you 1-star reviews. And somebody read Satchel Paugh and the Great Migration, said they didn't want to do an interview because of blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's stupid. So whatever, like you just got to move on from that stuff. So I think that it takes a certain strength of personality to say, okay, I'm going to put it out there and in a sense, not really care what anybody says about it. Because I know that I've done my part, and it's not going to connect with everyone. And you have to keep that mindset in mind all the time. I'm sure there will be a day when somebody sends me an email and says, I hated your book and blah, 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 and really hits the pain point right where I'm vulnerable and knocks me out for a day. But I'm old enough that like, shoot, I got through bullying in school. Like, a nasty email is not going to knock me out for long, I don't think.
Yeah. You pull out one of your books?
This is a book called Vortex Street, and it's the only one I have done an audiobook yet. And my 16-year-old son actually made music beats to put in between the poems. So
Sweet.
A little bit longer tracks with some like poems with music in between. So that's pretty fun. And the nice thing about doing it when I'm doing a reading is because I can actually complete an entire piece. So I'll read two, and hopefully this will kind of show you the difference between like the sublime and the absurd. So this one's called Fish and Stars. There are many fish, but one ocean. They may swim at different depths, but they share one country. There are many stars, but one sky. They're all so far away. We may never reach them, but they share one country. There are many children whose father left long ago. They may not know where they come from, but one day, like fish and stars, they will gather in one country. Then they will no longer know what it means to be fatherless.
Wow.
That's a cool one.
Thank you. Now let me read a silly one. Shifting gears hardcore. This one's about raising teenagers, and it's called Teenage Dragon, for those people who like fantasy. Dragon comes in the kitchen and dips his hand in my bowl of guacamole, bites off the tip of his tail. Crunchy. Regenerates tail. Double dips, eats everything, grows some more. Goes to the fridge, pulls out bottles and jars, mayo and ketchup, yellow mustard, relish, soy sauce, barbecue, Grey Poupon. Begins mixology, a dash of this, a squirt of that, condiment cocktail. Grabs my olives, the good purple ones from Spain. Olives are not a condiment, I say. You put them on sandwiches and in martinis, he argues. Some people consider them a staple, I say. So do I, he says, and dumps the whole jar, pits and all, into his concoction. Why do you only eat condiments, I ask, and why in my kitchen? How did this occur? Where are you from? One question at a time, he says, slurping. Where are you from? Which came first, the dragon or the egg? The armadillo. Why do you only eat condiments? I don't. Just because that's what I'm in the mood for today, don't assume that it's my entire diet. Tomorrow, perhaps lamb. The next day, a kale smoothie. In the back of the fridge, he finds a small jar of mint jelly. Speaking of lamb, he says, and scoops it up, dumps it in his goo, gives the whole stinky mess a swirl with a lone talon, tastes it. Needs salt, he declares. I hand him the Mediterranean Sea. What, am I supposed to stop him from eating? He's a teenage, fire-breathing dragon.
They were so different. And like one was like a thinker. And I had to kind of process it after you finished speaking. And then other one was like, just laugh along with it.
Yeah, right. And I think when I get into novels, you see those two things just flowing in and out of each other, at kind of simultaneously, which is why my wife will give me the feedback like, this is deeper than you realize. And then the next paragraph, she's laughing, because it's like, it just goes back and forth like that. If you got a little more time, I can pick up one of these steampunk. Satchel Pong took an extra long constitutional. Essentially, he ducked out of work early. Benno could handle most of the work by himself, and if you came by in person, Benno could truthfully tell the man Pong was out. He was in the habit of a short stroll to and from the office, having calculated to the pfennig how many taras he could save in a year if he didn't hire a rickshaw to get home at the end of a long day. He knew that in some ways he was lazy, but walking was a fiscal discipline, and besides, it kept him from complete corpulence. Tied to money, discipline was easy. His exercise made him wealthy, if not slender. Others who held office wouldn't hear of arriving at a party on foot, but Pong had no such social hang-ups. He was not often invited to parties anyway. Nobody invites a middle-aged bachelor to a dance. It's all so awkward. Pong was happy to have a stroll and a good book in the evening. He did enjoy music along the street. He would like to idle and listen to the pipers playing those flutes made from slim verlamsey branches or from conch shells, and the percussionists who rapped out rhythms and spat poems while tapping out a beat on heavy brubach limbs. But he'd feel obliged to drop a few pfennigs in their hats, which he was supposed to be saving, so he always hurried on by them. He walked along the coast for half an hour, still sweating but enjoying the cool breezes of ocean fresh air, until he came to a weather station located 100 paces from a small brubach compound with some 40 inhabitants homesteaded. They were not the hillbillies you'd find 4 hours hike from the city, out where you'd need a breathing apparatus and fireproof gear to survive. This village was close enough to Tehran City that the children walked into town along the coastal road to attend school. The local weatherman took his volunteer job seriously and reported his daily numbers to Pong, via the pneumatic system. Satchel checked the barometer to make sure it was functional, tapped the thermometer. Everything was in order, as he knew it would be. He thought he might go another hour up the coast to the next station. Then his stroll could be logged as work hours, a personal inspection of the instruments. He passed the first village and went another 500 paces when he heard someone running up behind him. Turning, Satchel Pong saw a boy of about 15 approaching. The lad was in good condition, and when he arrived, Pong noted that he was not even a bit out of breath. The boy fell in step and walked alongside Pong, who picked up his pace. "You're Magistrate Pong, aren't you?" said the boy. Pong thought he caught a hint of admiration in the kid's voice. Pong drew himself up. To be sure, sometimes it was annoying to be recognized in public, but other times it felt quite good. "I am." "Bully. Well, I think you're swell. At least maybe I do. I reckon it's grand to sit up in the municipal complex and shuffle papers for a terrific wage. But teacher says you aren't doing your job. There's been years now since you've issued a report. Mother says I was just a wee lad. Why?" "Who is your teacher?" Pong asked. That's neither here nor there," said the boy. "Oh, you're a clever lad, aren't you? What's your name then?" "My name is Emil. Everyone calls me Double E. Why haven't you issued a report?" "Look, son, the weather, it's complicated, hard to predict. I'm not a necromancer, a thaumaturge. There's no magic to it. It's pure science, but you can't know. It's inexact. Without the proper data, You're making excuses, aren't you? I've seen people make excuses in school. You know what we say? Mumble, mumble, excuses a tub full, barrel and crate. Your homework is late." The boy squinted at him. "It's getting hotter, isn't it? You, sir, were elected. Teacher says you should do your job, and with all due respect to your office, and I do feel it's fine to meet a man of your status, I'm of a mind to agree. Why, we'll be staging a protest outside your office on Conquest Day next week. I shouldn't have told you, but it's your one chance. Prepare a report, or some of the boys may even break your windows. We may do it anyway. Have you ever broken a window? It's a righteous gas, it is." "Huh, a delinquent, are you? My office is on the 4th floor, Pong said. You and your little thugs, you can't toss a rock so high. So why should I care what your teacher says?" He ran out of words. At the same time, he ran out of breath, so he spat at the boy's feet, wondering at his own vitriol. "Nah, we've constructed a mechanical sling. A trebuchet tosses a good 5-pound rock over a 30-yard wide, 16-foot high brewbotch hedge cleanly. It was part of our physics instruction. We were tossing rocks from the schoolyard clean out of town. We'll break your window. You don't watch it. You impertinent little half-throp country bumpkin ruffian. How dare you call me? Oh, I'll thrash your middle-aged toupee-wearing old right now. You get off me, you little activist. Mugging, blackmail, you thug bastard." Pong put one arm up to protect his face and swung blindly with his other hand. His arm connected with the wiry youngster's shoulder, and the boy tumbled to the ground. "That'll teach you, snot-nosed boy. Don't bother adults, especially important government men." "You gave me a bloody nose," the boy said, more surprised than hurt. "You came asking for trouble and waylaid a citizen on a public road. Assault and battery, backwoods banditry." The boy stood up, dusted himself off. "We'll be there on Conquest Day. Mark my words. We'll set your building aflame. Don't think we can't. It's time for the populace to hold this government accountable." "Shut up, you parroting communalist spy. Eat a furla leaf, you dictatorial fascist." "Oh, sacrilege then. Be off with you before I teach you a lesson you'll never forget. I'll break your arms, hillbilly punkun." Pong lunged at the youth, who turned and fled. "What kind of a stupid nickname is Double E anyway?" Pong yelled after him.
Cool. Very cool.
Oh.
The cover looked very cool too.
Yeah, my sister makes the covers and she does such a nice job. This is the 5th one. It's called The Prophets of Doom and the Leaping Hedgehog. Sorry about my lighting. This is probably the coolest one. The 3rd book in the series, Antoinette Jo and the Sky Dwellers.
Very cool.
You got to have the goggles in the steampunk stuff, you know.
It is action step time. Go for it.
So if you are feeling stuck about a creative project, my challenge is to go and walk for creativity. 10 minutes has been shown by scientific studies to significantly boost your creativity levels. It doesn't have to be a super long walk. So, but if you walk more than an hour, that's awesome too, which is what which is what I try to do every day. So
That's fantastic. So then if anyone does that and they go take a walk to try and boost their creativity and they actually come up with something creative and pursue it, then they should tag you on social media so that you can know that your inspiration helped empower them.
I would love that. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
My favorite social media right now is Instagram. So that would be the place to tag me. Take a picture as you're walking. I do that a lot.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone do that. Take a walk and share your creativity.
Awesome. Any last words on your end?
Just to add to it, what we're doing is the Unleash Your Superhero campaign. So all of these action steps are things that people can do to go from their ordinary, like where they are now, to actually feeling more happy, being more confident, feeling more healthful, being more fulfilled. So that's now them being extraordinary. They're extraordinary. And then after they continue doing that for themselves, and taking new actions and more action steps, then they become like a hero to themselves. And once they start empowering other people to also do similar, then they become a superhero. And throughout, they win prizes.
Oh, that's cool. Wow.
Yeah.
So then your people mention or write back to you or use your hashtag that they are actually making gains based on what you said, then you let us know the really interesting stories, because then there's an opportunity for you and that person to come back on the show.
Yeah. And
Oh, that's cool.
we're going to do shows like that so that we can help to celebrate the ahas that people may have had through the creations that other people have put together based on their ahas. Right. So just that circle.
That sounds amazing. I'd love to talk to you guys some more. Just, see what other ways we can support each other, network. Who knows where these kind of things lead, right? But it's been cool to get to know you. I'm having the time of my life. It's a lot of fun. And thank you for having me on. I really, really appreciate it.
Today's show is brought to you in part by the Muskoka Lakes Hotel and their VIP Wellness Suite upgrades.
Tuning in with Jeff and sometimes Mindy supports the Rethink Fit initiative, empowering you to take action to love better how you think, feel, function, look, and dream. Visit www.unleashyoursuperhero.com.